Welcome back to Math Concepts. In this video we are going to discuss the idea of simple interest. In a later video we'll discuss compound interest. Simple interest is usually seen in smaller loans. For example, if you got a loan for, let's say, $3,000 or $5,000, that will probably be a simple interest loan, whereas larger loans, like say $10,000, or certainly the amount of money you would buy for a mortgage on a home, that would typically be compound interest. So let's get to the document camera and look at some key ideas and examples involving simple interest. Okay, so the main thing I would expect a student to be able to do after watching this video is compute simple interest. Now, when we are working with interest, we are going to be working with percentage rates, and when you're doing computations, you always want to switch to the equivalent decimal notation. Okay, now of course we know how to do that from grade school, right? We just move this decimal 2 spots. Okay, so 6% interest, you imagine the decimal point sitting right there. 6% interest would become 0.06 in decimal form. 15% interest, you imagine the decimal point right there, move it 2 spots, 0.15. Okay, note up here, we moved the decimal 2 spots and we filled in a 0 into the missing place. Let's say we had this as our decimal version of a percent. Well, if you have the decimal and want to go to percent notation, you move the decimal in the other direction. You move it to the right. So 0.105 would become 10.5%. 0.03 is 3%. Okay, so make sure you have facility doing that, because we will need to work on that quite a bit. Okay, and another thing to note is that we're often going to be dealing with time. Okay, the interest that you are charged or the interest that you earn depends on how long the deposit or the loan is for. So typically we need to deal with time measured in years. Sometimes you'll have the time given to you in months. In that case, you convert to a fraction by dividing by 12. So for example, 6 months, that turns into 6/12, or 1/2 of a year. 3 months, 3/12, or 1/4 of a year. Alright, so I think we've got all the tools we need to go ahead and work on some examples with simple interest. Okay, so let's get right into the mix here. Calculate the simple interest earned on a 1-year deposit of $500 if the interest rate is 4%. Okay, so this is the key here. The simple interest formula. The interest is equal to the principal multiplied by the rate multiplied by the time. Now the principal, that's a kind of a fancy word. It means whatever the initial deposit was, or whatever the loan amount was for. Principal is your starting amount. Rate and time. Okay, so we've got all the ingredients here to calculate the interest. The principal is $500. The rate is 0.04, and the time is 1 year. It was already given to us in years. Now, when you're working with these problems, I recommend you have a dedicated calculator to use on these things. So 500 times 0.04, and that gives me $20 worth of interest. Okay. here's another example. Calculate the simple interest due on a 4-month loan if the interest rate is 5.25%. Okay, so following the same formula right here, interest equals principal times rate times time. Must have forgot to write down the amount. Okay, calculate the simple interest on a 4-month loan of $1,500 if the interest rate is 5.25%, right? So 1,500 times 0.0525. Okay, notice I've converted to decimal notation there. Okay, now this would be wrong, okay? I should not put a times 4 there, right? That was 4 months. We have to convert that to a fraction of a year. So that should be times 4 over 12. All right, and we can pretty much enter that into our calculator just as is. You can do it right there. Okay, so 1,500 times 0.0525 times 4 divided by 12. And then we push equals. Okay, so $26.25. Okay, now in the previous two examples we have not had to worry about this, but when we're dealing with money, we should always round our answer to 2 decimal places. Okay, also I want to note the similarities and differences between the two problems. Obviously we did the computation in the exact same way for both problems. I want you to note in the first one, it said calculate the simple interest earned on a 1-year deposit of $500. Okay, so in this scenario, you are putting money in the bank. You're going to take $500, put it into your bank account, leave it there for 1 year. And as a kind of reward for you doing that, the bank is going to give you 20 bucks. Okay, this is simple interest due on a 4-month loan of $1,500. Okay, so here you are borrowing money. You're borrowing $1,500 for a period of 4 months. This is the interest you have to pay for doing that. All right, so the calculation is of course done the exact same way. It's just in the first example you are earning money for depositing the $500 into the bank. Here you are being charged money because you borrowed stuff from the bank. Okay? Now of course, when you're going to pay off a loan like this, you can't just leave the bank with the $1,500 and then 4 months later you pay back $26.25. That's not how that works. Of course you have to pay back the original amount plus the interest. So in this example we're going to talk about that. That's what the maturity value is. I keep forgetting to write down the amounts on these things. Okay, so 9-month loan, and the 9-month loan was for $4,000. Okay, kind of need to know the starting amount to get this done. Okay, so the maturity value is equal to the principal plus the interest. Okay, the maturity value, and sometimes that's also called the future value when you're dealing with a loan or a deposit or whatever. Okay, so you know how to calculate the interest, so you know how to calculate the maturity value. So let's look at this right here. Okay, so $4,000 So that's our principal. The interest rate was 0.0875%. We convert that to a decimal. And the time on the loan was 9 months. Once again, we remember to convert that to a fraction. Okay, so we do our number crunching right here. 4,000 times, let me get that into the light there, 4,000 times 0.0875 times 9 divided by 12, because it was a 9-month loan. We press enter. 262.5. Okay, $262.50. Okay, so that is the interest. Now there's another step here because this problem asks for the maturity value. And to get the maturity value, we just take the initial $4,000 principal plus the $262.50 interest, so the maturity value is $4,262.50. Okay, so that's the amount that you have to go and pay back. You borrow the $4,000 for 9 months at 8.75% simple interest. The interest you have to pay is $262.50. To actually pay off the loan, you got to bring back the initial amount plus the interest. Okay, so we know how to compute interest. Simple interest is principal times rate times time. And we also know how to deal with maturity value. Okay, the maturity value is the principal plus the interest.